Welcome back to the Banajwar video classes. Today, let us study about the ear. Ear is another important sense organ. So we are going to study today about its different parts, its detailed structure and function, and how actually we are going to hear the mechanism of hearing. Now this diagram gives you the anatomy of the ear. The external part, which is called as pinna, ear pinna or auricle, is a irregular shaped cartilaginous structure covered with the skin. That is called as an ear pinna, and that helps in directing the sound waves into the auditory canal. External auditory canal. External auditory canal and the ear pinna together is called as external ear. It's called as external ear. Now the function of the auditory canal is to transmit the sound waves to the interior, because at the end, the internal end of the external auditory canal, if you look at, there is a tympanic membrane. The sound waves have to reach the tympanic membrane. So as because this auditory canal is open to the exterior, there is a chance of dust particles entering inside. So to protect our tympanic membrane from dust and germs, there is a perfect mechanism here. Inside we have the hair, and these hair trap the dust particles, and there are some mucus glands over here which secrete some mucus that trap the dust particles and germs. So in that way the tympanic membrane is kept clean and protected. Now after the external ear, the next part of the ear is the middle ear. The middle ear is air-filled. There will be air over here. Air-filled chamber. Okay, we know that the sound cannot travel in vacuum. So therefore, air is essential for transmission of the sound waves. So sound cannot travel if there is a vacuum. So to transmit the sound waves, we need air here. So air is there inside. Air-filled chamber, that is called as a middle ear, but that contains very important structure in the ear. The smallest bones in our body, they are called as the ear ossicles. Ear ossicles, and there are three: malleus, incus and stapes. We can remember these three in correct order by remembering the word Yamias miss. M for malleus, I for incus, and S for stapes. Among these three very tiny bones, stapes is the smallest bone, and the muscle attached to the stapes, stapedial muscle it is called as, that is the smallest muscle in our body. Now these three pieces of the bones are interconnected, and these help, the malleus, incus and stapes, they help in transmitting the vibrations created by the sound wave. That is, when the sound waves hit the tympanic membrane will be vibrating, and the same frequency of the sound waves and their vibrations is further amplified. The sound waves are rather amplified by these three bones and transmitted to the internal ear. Internal ear contains two things. One is the membranous labyrinth, and another is the cochlea. Membranous labyrinth or vestibular organ also it is called as, and a coiled tube, that is called as the cochlea. Now the cochlea actually is the main part where the sound waves actually bring about the sense. That is, the sound waves, when they enter into the cochlea, there is a hearing organ called as organ of Corti inside, which actually generates the electric signals which are carried by the nerves, and the nerves arising from the cochlea are called as cochlear nerves, and similarly from the vestibular organ or membranous labyrinth, which is the organ of balance in our body, and the nerves coming from that is called as the vestibular nerve. These two together will form the vestibulocochlear nerve, or we can call it as auditory nerve, that carries the signals from the ear to the central nervous system. So this is about the structure of internal ear. Now if you look at, there is one small opening here. This is called as the oval window. Oval window to which the stapes is attached. So that means the sound waves are transmitted into the internal ear or the cochlea through this oval window. Now to understand the detailed structure of cochlea further, if we take this cochlea, which is highly coiled tube, open it up and extend it, it will appear like this. Okay? Cochlea has got three regions. This tube is further divided into three regions. The upper one is called as the scala vestibuli, middle one scala media, and the lower one is called as scala tympani. And the scala vestibuli continues at the posterior end with the scala tympani, and that's how the sound waves, the vibrations created by the sound waves, so those vibrations will be sent along this scala vestibuli to the scala tympani. The middle one is called as scala media, which actually contains the very important organ called as organ of Corti, which was discovered by Alfonso Corti, the scientist whose name is given to this organ, this structure. So organ of Corti, and just above it there is a gelatinous membrane called as Tectorial Membrane. Inside the scala vestibuli and scala tympani, there is a fluid filled inside. So that fluid is called as the perilymph. Perilymph. And the fluid which is present inside the scala media, that fluid is known as endolymph. This is what we see here, the fluid, endolymph. Okay, and the narrow tube or narrow passage which connects the scala vestibuli with the scala tympani is called as helicotrema. It's important to remember, multiple choice questions have been asked on this particular aspect. So helicotrema, that is the small space or passage which connects the upper and the lower tubes, and the perilymph continues through it. Okay. Now the same structure in a cross section I have taken here to study the detailed parts of the cochlea further. Now, till now we have understood that the sound waves which first strike at the tympanic membrane that make the three ossicles, ear ossicles, vibrate, and these ossicles, these ear ossicles actually amplify the sound, and they send the sound waves further into the cochlea through the oval window, and that oval window is opening into the scala vestibuli. And further, how actually the process of transmission of the sound waves and conversion of sound waves into electrochemical signals, how it is done, we'll look into that now, because it is the function of the cochlea to convert the sound waves into electrochemical signals which are carried by the auditory nerve ultimately. Now in a cross section of the cochlea, we see here, this is the scala vestibuli, the tube, the dorsal tube or the upper tube you can say, which is filled with the perilymph inside, perilymph, and the same perilymph is also there in the scala tympani. And this is the central one, is the scala media, where you find the endolymph. Here you have the endolymph. It is the scala media where the organ of corti is located. Let us look into the structure of organ of corti. Organ of corti contains tall cylindrical cells which are called as the Reiter's cells, Dieter's cell. And these cells are supporting cells. The main actual sensory cells, the receptors for the sound waves or the phonoreceptors here are the hair cells. This is the inner hair cell, and these are the outer hair cell. We call them hair cell because they have stereocilia. Stereocilia, that is the cilia which are static, not waving, not moving. So these are the stereocilia, and such a kind of sensory cell is called as the phonoreceptor or hair cell. And from such hair cells the nerves arise, and all these nerves, all these sensory neurons will join to form the nerve that is called as the cochlear nerve. So each and every sensory cell, the hair cell, is connected with the sensory neurons which collectively join together forming the cochlear nerve, and that joins with the vestibular nerve to form the auditory nerve. Now what else you see in the organ of corti? You see here there is a tunnel, there is a gap that is called as the tunnel of corti, and it is formed by two very tall cells which join at the upper end, and these cells are called as pillar cells. These are called as the pillar cells. pillar cells. And this tunnel of Corti separates the inner hair cells from the outer hair cells. Now let's take up other structure which you see here. Tectorial membrane, which is just above the organ of Corti. This tectorial membrane is playing important role here because when the hair cells, the cilia of the hair cells, they press onto the tectorial membrane, then the electric signals or the electrochemical signals are generated in these sensory cells. Now one more thing you have to remember here, that the lining of the scala vestibuli and scala media here, this region which is separating the scala media and the scala vestibuli, that is called as Greaseless membrane. Greaseless membrane, okay? And the membrane between the scala media and the scala tympani, that is called as basilar membrane or bacillary membrane, also it is called as basilar membrane or bacillary membrane. This membrane is playing very important role. It is made up of a thin layer of cells, that is the lining of this scala tympani, and then the basement membrane of these epithelial cells and some collagen fibers together that make up bacillary membrane. Okay? And the liquid inside the scala media, as I have told you, is the endolymph, and labeled here endolymph. Now we have learnt about the detailed internal structure of the cochlea also. Let us put light on how the mechanism of hearing is taking place. We have already noted that the sound waves which are transmitted by the tympanic membrane and then by the ossicles, ear ossicles, now those waves have been transferred to the cochlea through the oval window, and the sound waves, when they enter, or the vibrations caused by the sound waves, they make the lymph, that is the perilymph, move. And this perilymph actually shows ripples. Ripples means wave-like things in the water surface. If you look at a stagnant pond where the water is static, no movements you see. If you just put a stone, you see that at that point where the stone is striking the surface of the water, you find the ripples, circles. So if you see in cross section, there will be waves like. So such ripples are created in the perilymph of the scala vestibuli. And these will have pressure, or they will put some force on the Greaseless membrane, and that will transfer the same pressure to the scala media, where the liquid endolymph will be putting pressure onto the tectorial membrane. And as we know that the upper and the lower tubes are connected, the rippling movement of the fluid in the perilymph from the scala vestibuli to scala tympani continue, and these rippling movements will have their effect on bacillary membrane, and this bacillary membrane movements. So as the basilar membrane is moved, that makes the hair cells press onto the tectorial membrane. When this happens, when the stereocilia are disturbed in the sensory cells, the hair cells, we see that the changes in the membrane permeability takes place, and action potential is generated. That is what the electrochemical signals are generated, and these electrochemical signals are then carried by the neurons attached to each of these sensory cells, and all these neurons together, the sensory neurons together, will make the sensory nerve, that is the cochlear nerve, and that carries the signals generated in the organ of corti to the central nervous system, where we have the auditory center, mainly in the temporal region of the brain, where actually we are able to recognize the kind of sound we are listening to. Okay, and that is how the hearing is brought about. Now that is one part of the ear, because ear as such is the organ of both hearing and balance, organ of balance as well as hearing. So especially the tilting movements of our head and the axis of the body, those are detected by the balancing organ that is called as the membranous labyrinth. Membranous labyrinth. And this membranous labyrinth, if you see here, it has got 3 semicircular canals, one anterior, one posterior vertical canals, and another horizontal semicircular canal, which are connected to the vestibule. Vestibule is a sac-like structure which has got again 2 parts, utriculus, and it has got 2 parts, that is the sacculus and utriculus, sacculus and utriculus, and these are connected to the cochlea. Especially a tube connects deep into the scala media. Therefore we see that the endolymph continues in the endolymph is also seen filling these semicircular canals and the vestibular organ. Inside the vestibular organ, there are some structures which help in the sensory structures that help in the detection of balance or position. Tilting of head can be detected. Now with a small diagram of the membranous labyrinth, let us try to understand how the balancing is brought about by our ear. Now before going to that, let me tell you one more important thing about the Eustachian tube. You see here there is a Eustachian tube that is connecting the middle ear to our throat. Now this Eustachian tube is very important because the air from our mouth will enter into the middle ear, and this always maintain the balance of the pressure outside and inside the tympanic membrane. Therefore, sometimes when we hear about a very loud sound, too much pressure will be there on the tympanic membrane, and that may cause damage to the tympanic membrane. So immediately we open up our mouth. That is because we are allowing more air to enter through the Eustachian tube and put equal pressure onto the tympanic membrane from inside, so that the tympanic membrane is static and it is not being damaged. So that is how the Eustachian tube helps in hearing. And sometimes if the Eustachian tube is filled with the secretions, like what happens during the cold and cough, we see that this Eustachian tube is blocked, our hearing becomes affected. We feel that. So that is because the pressure inside will be building up when it is closed. Okay, now let us take up the organ of hearing. Is audio बंद हो जाए? Okay, now let us know about membranous labyrinth, which is the organ of balancing. As we have already seen in previous diagram, here I have drawn a separate diagram of the membranous labyrinth, where you can see the two vertical semicircular canals which have a common duct here, and then a third one, semicircular horizontal canal, two vertical, one horizontal, and the ends of these canals, where they join with the utriculus, they are bulged and they are called as ampullae. And this membranous sac, utriculus, further is connected to sacculus and also to the cochlea by thin duct. Now inside the ampullae of the semicircular canals, as well as in the sacculus and utriculus, there are some structures, sensory structures called as maculae. Maculae are made up of sensory hair cells and otoliths. Otoliths are braid-like substances, and the sensory hair cells are the epithelial cells with the tufts of cilia, that is bundles of cilia at their free ends, and these are embedded in a gelatinous material. And what happens is, when your head tilts on one side, the otoliths, the grains, will be pressurizing onto the cilia of the hair cells. And when the cilia of the hair cells bend, then the action potential is created, electric signal is generated because it causes change in the membrane permeability of the hair cells, and that creates the signal, electrochemical signal, and that is further taken away by the sensory neuron connected to these cells that make up sensory nerve, which is called as vestibular nerve, which later joins with the cochlear nerve, forming the auditory nerve. So in this way, the changes which are taking place in the macula, that trigger the generation of the signals or impulses, and these electrochemical signals generated here will be transmitted to the central nervous system, and the hearing center, like what we have seen, for hearing also there is a center in our brain, and we are able to hear the sound, recognize the sound, the brain's hearing center. Similarly, for balancing also, the information in the form of signals will be reaching the central nervous system, where it is further processed, analyzed, and then it is understood by our central nervous system that the position of the head is changing, or we are losing the balance. So immediately the head position is brought back to the normal. You might have experienced, if you are trying to walk on one line of the bricks, definitely you feel at the moment that it's when you are trying to walk, you lose your balance, your head will be tilting, but you again correct it back. So that balancing, the position of your body, the axis of your body is tilting, and that sense, that information is being perceived by the membranous labyrinth and sent to the central nervous system, so that the response is brought about and you are balancing your body on the ground. That is how the membranous labyrinth is working. It is actually sending the information to the cerebellum. Cerebellum is a part of brain which is on the back side of your head, and this cerebellum is actually maintaining our coordinations between different parts of the body. And with this coordination and support, we are able to again gain our balance, and we are able to walk, stand, dance, do all these activities, and we will not fall down because our balance is being maintained. That's about the balancing organ, membranous labyrinth. With this, the study of the sense organs is completed as per your NCERT syllabus. We have taken up only the eye and the ear. Okay, so I will meet you in another video lecture with another topic. Bye.